Alright, well, I'm not gonna be able to really get them in the video. But there's a pig and a sheep and a goat. Anyway, so let's talk about why people say irrelevant things. This video is going to be about, it's going to involve the halo effect, straw man fallacy, what I am going to call spillage or vocal spillage. This is probably already a very well studied thing in the mind. I'm certain that it is. I can't remember what the term is. Yeah, so let's just get into it. Vocal spillage. So first you have to have the basics of voice theory. And I just have to assume that you have that. Voice theory, I've made videos explaining it. If you want it to be well presented, if you want a well presented, short, concise explanation of voice theory, besides like the 2-hour, 3-hour thing that I did on my birthday, not that you would know that. Well, not you, do you know that date, which is the 29th of Alber, the first month of the year, Alber, 29th of Alber. If you want to see a better presented one, check out a video that will be made in like 50 years by someone who learns about my idea on the internet. Or someone might put in the comments the biological term for spillage, and then you can Google that as well. Oh, no, we're talking about voice theory. Yeah, so for voice theory, just have to wait a couple decades. But for the ones who want to hear it here first, when a voice, we're not reasonable. So sometimes a voice will activate and will have consequences that maybe it shouldn't have. It will activate sort of nearby voices that actually don't match the situation, but there's just spillover of the activation. In the brain, there are lots of examples of this, but one fun example is people who feel their orgasms in their, who, if you stimulate their feet, it's like you stimulated women who, if you stimulate their feet, it's like you stimulate their clitoris. Or people who feel their orgasms in their feet. Anyway, it's spillover in the sensory cortex of the brain. So like there's a part of the brain where those neurons are interpreting sense information from a specific region of the body, right? And it's like mapped out. It's this strip, the sensory strip. And you've got your knee somewhere, your hand somewhere, your face somewhere, your back. There's not a lot of space for your back, by the way. That's why we're not very sensitive. Can't really identify where someone is touching us on our backs. And of course our hands is a big area that's involved in that. And sometimes activity in one area can spill over into the other. And so you can feel, so like phantom limb syndrome. If you lose a limb, you might still really feel like your hand is there because there's still activity in that area when you touch here. So I don't really know. Okay. So, so I want to talk about spill and calling. Spilling and calling. Okay. I don't actually know how it works. I don't know. I'm going to explain two ideas to you, and maybe one of them or both of them are mechanisms that exist in the brain. Maybe they work together. I have no idea. Maybe none of them. So there's the spill mechanism and the call mechanism, or the spill tendency and the call mechanism. All right. So the call mechanism, together with the spill mechanism, can explain why we say irrelevant things. The spill mechanism, so can call mechanism explain the halo effects, and the spill tendency and the call mechanism can also, yeah, it's like the same thing. So we have to work on the name. It's kind of, they're two parts of the same thing. So, when in any moment when you need to, let's say, respond to something, if you are put on the spot, I suspect, I hypothesize, that triggers a voice in the brain that I would call a call voice. A voice that puts a call out to other voices, sort of looking for a response. And then the spill tendency is that just when a voice is activated, sometimes that can activate a neighboring voice that isn't even actually very pertinent, like we talked about the feeling of the limbs. Okay, so the halo effect is the fact that we tend to assume that a person has good qualities if the first quality that we see is good. They can be attractive, they can be intelligent, whatever it is, then we just assume the other things. And I speculate that what happens is that assuming doesn't actually happen. That maybe there are no voices that say, oh, okay, this person is smart because look how symmetrical their face is. What I suspect is that then if you are asked to estimate the person's intelligence that you just saw briefly, then there's a call voice that will call out for a judgment. Hey, what do we think about this person's intelligence? And then because we validated their appearance, that validation can either spill over into something that says, yeah, they're smart, because, you know, they're smart voice got validated by their beautiful voice. Or maybe when that call is sent out, just the yeah, they're beautiful voice answers and goes, yeah. It's saying, yeah, they're beautiful, but the call was just looking for, is there like thumbs up anybody, basically? Because it's really not nuanced, the brain. It's So that's calling and spilling. A positive evaluation can spill over and then, which would mean that it can cause positive evaluations in other places that maybe it shouldn't. Or it can speak up when there's no question for it being asked. So it can be overrepresented, it can overpresent itself. So the straw man fallacy. I was having an argument with my cousin, and this is going to explain straw man fallacy and people saying irrelevant things. Basically, why people say irrelevant things this is what I'm hypothesizing, and I think I've only had this idea about 12 hours, so it might be really wrong. And it almost certainly is, but maybe there's some truth to it. A call voice gets sent out, and it isn't answered by anything that's actually pertinent. And it just keeps going out until that spillage that activates something that really shouldn't be activated. There you go. That's why people say things that are irrelevant. That's why people commit the straw man fallacy. Oh, the straw man, which, well, I think if you're watching this, you know it, but the straw man fallacy is someone says something to you in this hypothetical world that we think in this fake world we think we exist in. Someone makes an argument. Of course, no one in the world actually makes arguments, but someone says something to you, and then you challenge oppose their argument, but you oppose actually a different argument. You pretend like they had said something else, and then you attack that argument. Yeah, so if someone says, hey, I think that we should bring I don't know, hey, there's a lot of people around. My girlfriend says, hey, I think we should bring Neo into the vehicle because there's a lot of people around. And I say to her, we're not going to keep Neo in the Vangela all the time. We're not going to, every time we see one person, have him come into the Vangela just because, whatever, one person. Well, that's not at all what she said. She was just talking about now. She was saying there's a lot of people. And I'm acting like she's making some generalization that she isn't. And I'm acting like she's talking about one person when she isn't. Straw man is something that we do all the time. We do it all the time. We just respond to just something else. And we don't do it intentionally. We're not trying to twist things. We're not trying to manipulate. We're not trying to distract. Instead, what's happening is that call voice activates. And then basically, I think how the call voice works biologically is that it just stimulates a bunch of possible responses. And then if those responses were already being stimulated by the situation, well, then that's going to go past the threshold enough to activate them. That's all. So then they'll be slapped. They'll deliver. That's all. So in the situation, if I've already got voices thinking about people are too sensitive about dogs or whatever, and it's just the keywords inside, neo, people, just those 3 keywords are just going to slap are going to stimulate a whole bunch of voices. And then if I need to respond to her, I'm probably going to stimulate some voices that are not relevant. Some of those voices that are not relevant, that are not at all what she said. Because I already had some voices going like, I hate how I have to keep Neo inside because of people or something like that. I hate how Neo has to spend so much time inside. Now, she's not saying I have to spend a lot of time inside, but that voice is already ready. And then I need a response. Call voice went out, stimulated that a bit more, broke the threshold, voice delivers, boom. That's it. And it's a really important idea, because if you understand that the brain isn't well delimited, if you understand that, like, when you send a query into your brain, it's not only the correct things that come back, the relevant things. If you realize that it's a lot more just like activity just bleeds, spills. It's like, it's a lot more, everybody kind of participates, even voices that aren't qualified. Even voices that just happen to be nearby will vote. And when you understand that, well, first of all, you lose a lot of your trust, confidence in. Because that's probably the thing that confused me the most when I disagree with people. It's the irrelevance of what was said. Of course, I say a lot of irrelevant things. Hey, I have a human brain too. My brain works the same way. There's spill, and I have ADHD, so there's a lot of spilling. This leads to that, which leads to blah, blah, blah. And it's not linear. So this can lead to these things, and that can lead to those things. But I'm not a genius. Not like I have all of these things consciously. I'm manipulating them. But there's just lots of different voices talking. And I just try to catch myself. I just know that. So when I say something, and I'm like, whoa, I just try to. And the more that I realize this spill tendency and this lack of discrimination when the call voice, in the call voices, in the call mechanism, it's just not discriminating enough. And now that I know that, how cool, because I can, I have a couple voices like, okay, so, we'll keep an eye out for, we'll check the relevance of things. We're not going to take it for granted. There you go, bud. That's awesome. And we did that in 15 minutes, and it's an awesome video because straw man fallacy, halo effect, people saying irrelevant things. So watch the things that you say. You're not going to be able to notice at first, but just make a habit of saying, maybe that's irrelevant. And announcing that possibility will slap some surveillance in your mind. And maybe a voice will go, oh yeah, that is irrelevant. Or maybe that'll get your conversation partner to realize it's irrelevant and help you see how what you said was irrelevant. Or if it's a good partner, but they might just take advantage. Or of course, notice how the brain likes to fill in the blanks. Don't fill in the blanks. Sometimes what someone says is irrelevant, and if you don't try to twist it or if you don't just assume it's relevance, you don't take it for granted, you might realize, wait, that's not at all a response to this. People give evidence. It's not at all evidence for what was said, but they needed a response. And it's relevant enough to the situation, and the brain was desperate and sent out that call. So there you go. That's awesome. That's awesome we did that video.